What is going on, everyone, and welcome to my review of Psycho 3, the follow-up to Psycho 2, which was a surprisingly fantastic sequel, cut the last 3 minutes. And I was thinking, look, maybe Psycho 3 would be good, because I had heard that it retcons the ending of 2, and I went into this with moderate expectations, but still high hopes that I would enjoy it. Anthony Perkins is here behind the camera. He returns as Norman Bates, and while it's definitely a step down from 2, and obviously nowhere near the original film, I still had quite a lot of fun with this film. So Psycho 3 is kind of interesting because it follows a young woman named Maureen who somewhat resembles Marion Crane. She's a suicidal nun, and she goes on the run and ends up at the Bates Motel. And Norman starts to have a bit of a fondness for her, but as you can expect, Mother doesn't like that very much. So starting off with the positives of this film, I really enjoy that this film leans into the dark comedy that was only hinted at in the first 2 films. I would say that this film's more of a black comedy than an actual slasher. I giggled quite a bit, actually. You can kind of tell the tone it's going for just by looking at Norman's face on the poster. And it really works for that. There are a lot of kind of awkward situations. Norman is full psycho mode again. He's really just lost the plot. He's his comedic timing is surprisingly good here. There's some parts when there's the body in the ice machine and the sheriff opens it up and like it's a hot day, so he puts his hands in and grabs some ice out, and Norman's just like, whoa, just shitting himself while trying to keep composed. It's really quite funny and comedic, and I like that it leans into that. When it's going for this kind of, the story here is very just cheap and kind of schlocky. If it's going to do that, then it may as well just lean into the absurdity of it. And it does, and it makes for a very entertaining watch. Anthony Perkins is wonderful as Norman again. I really like what he does with the character here. I think that he's hilarious. I think that he's definitely more menacing than he was in the first 2, believe it or not, because he's kind of just like, full on psycho mode. Let's just lean into this nonsense. And he's a lot of fun to watch. The performance of his really fits the cheesy 80s style of this film. It's a very well shot film as well. It's kind of got a lot of neon lighting almost in parts. There are some really weird sequences. There's a lot more kind of nudity and stuff that we came to see in a lot of the 80s slasher films like Friday the 13th. And it's a really fun and easy watch because there's this kind of aura about it that's completely different to the first 2 films. But just the feeling, it really does feel like the 1980s. At least 1980s on film. The synth kind of score really works for that as well. It's a really good soundtrack. Actually, all of the films in the franchise have got a really good soundtrack. And I really appreciate the direction that they went with it here. It's very cheesy and silly, but it works. I really love the final climax of this film where you see Norman in full-on mother mode. You actually see him in the wig and you see him talking in his mother's voice. It's overdubbed, but the overdubbing is actually really good. It's really quite funny and quite freaky as well.
Why can't you leave my poor son, my Norman, alone?
And him chasing her around up the house and everything like that. The lighting of it is really creepy. As I said earlier, the light in this film, Anthony Perkins does a great job with it. He knows what he wants to do. He knows how to make it creepy. The kind of shadows of Mrs. Bates running around, well, Norman, but Mrs. Bates' personality, just walking around and standing in like doorways and stuff with the candles and everything. It's a really good final set piece, and it retcons that stupid twist from the end of 2, which I'm glad that they realised that they made a mistake with that, because that was horrible. But the retcon only comes towards the end of the film, so it's not like a complete 180 turn from the end of 2. So 3 still mostly follows on with that context, but I'm glad that they did change it. Now, this film is a big step down from 2. Most of the performances aren't really that good. I thought the person who played Maureen was really quite dry and just not really all that interesting. I like seeing Norman actually grow an attachment and a fondness for someone. That was really good. But I was never really invested in her character. I was kind of like, oh, where are we going with this? Why are we following her for so much? And the guy that plays Dwayne Duke was insufferable. I know that his character was supposed to be, but he really just like grated on my nerves. And the overall plot and story of this film, like it basically adds nothing to the franchise, because at the end, eventually, Norman just gets locked up again, and it's just because he's been in full psycho mode since the end of 2. So this film really has nothing to add to the story or the characters even at all. Like, Norman, seriously, it's just basically like, we went psycho, he was crazy. 2, he was back to normal and started to fall back into it again. And then 3, he's crazy again. And then the end of 3, he just ends up back in the same position where he was at the end of 1. It just doesn't really, there's nothing there, really. But still, I do like him in the car. I like that smile that he gives. And just, again, the lighting with Anthony Perkins, what he's done to have kind of like, a shadow over half of his face and the other one's exposed. It kind of like, he's like a Jekyll and Hyde thing, obviously, because he's 2 personalities. That was really clever. But overall, Psycho 3 is a very likeable film. It's a very entertaining film. It's a very enjoyable film that adds nothing to the franchise. Most of the side characters aren't that good. There's a lot of black comedy here, which is really funny. But it's a totally unnecessary film that I'm not mad that it exists. I enjoyed it. It just has nothing to say and doesn't really do anything whatsoever to progress the franchise forward. So Psycho 3, I would say that this film is worth a watch. Thanks for watching my review on Psycho 3. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe and comment. Let me know what you think of Psycho 3, and check out all my other videos and all the other videos in the Psycho review series as well. And I will see you all later. Bye.